This was the best feature that has ever been introduced to YouTube in the history of ever. It's so amazing. How did we live before it? Like, how did we live before we had the timestamping? It's so nice. All right, let's go.
They're fine, so I don't even mind it if that were to happen to me.
Professor, hello. Can you see and hear us?
Yes, I can hear you fine.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
You know, I have to say I'm a new fan of yours. I found your content on TikTok. What do you think about that?
Wait, really?
Well, I'm glad you got in there before the people who want to shut it down to take it away.
Okay, that's interesting. What do you think about the TikTok shutdown? That's kind of a good.
That's a good way to start. But yeah. Professor Wolff, watch out. He's a liberal. The man you're speaking to, he's saying he likes your videos, but he's a big business owner and a liberal. I'm just letting you know.
Okay, well, I'm suitably forewarned. I shall be terribly, terribly careful.
Okay, yes. I'll have you know I'm stealing your labor right now.
All right.
He's an open-minded one, though. He is an open-minded liberal.
Yeah. So what do you actually? I find the whole pursuit to shut down TikTok a little bit, or it's all kind of bad faith, in my opinion. It all seems like a bunch of BS. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I understand why it's being done. I understand that many of the things that are happening in the economy, which is what I study, have to do with a rather desperate effort of the United States to reverse history. That doesn't usually work out real well, and I don't expect it's going to work out real well this time either. But it's a way for politicians to pander, and they don't usually miss a chance to doing that if it gives them some advantage.
I mean, look at the bathroom bills. The anti-trans bathroom bills, there is yet to be a single instance of a trans woman assaulting a cis woman in a bathroom. And yet, like 50% of Fox News is spent talking about it. It's pathetic. It's absolutely pathetic. Hassan and Dan said that they were shocked when Ethan came to them and said he wanted to get Professor Wolff on. That's so cool.
Right.
Professor Wolff, what would you say to people that are possibly speculating that this is an effort by big tech to basically use xenophobia to effectively shut out a market competitor that has been really dominant, a market competitor that is not obviously owned by Silicon Valley, that doesn't offer the same backdoors, even though it offers similar backdoors, I would suspect, but not the same ones that Silicon Valley tech giants would offer.
Like, I would lean very heavily in the idea that the most important thing for so many politicians is literally just, we need to protect American hegemonic rule. We have to be Silicon Valley. No other country can do this. And they will make up bullshit. They'll be like, well, it's for your safety. It's for your privacy because they're stealing all your data. It's like, yeah, so is everything. So is Facebook. So is Twitter. So is Instagram. All of these companies are stealing all of your information. And guess what? They're selling it. If TikTok really wanted your data, they would just buy it from data brokers.
People claim that this is done to erode competition.
Look, my experience over many, many years is that actions like this never have one or two causes. They are decisions that are made that meet a bunch of criteria, or if you like, respond to a variety of causes, any one of which wouldn't have been enough to make it happen, but it's the whole collection of them that make it happen. So yeah, one of the factors going into the TikTok decision was it the convenient way you can have the government favor one
Tech
competitor over others. It is often arranged by those other competitors to get rid of the one that they don't like or that they can all agree on getting rid of. And so that becomes part of the story. You could see that already, or this helps you figure it out, by going after the Huawei Corporation, which produced last year and the year before things that compete with American companies. So this was a convenient way before the general onslaught against China really got going to strike a blow, to get some support for sitting politicians from those who benefit by getting rid of Huawei. And same thing with TikTok.
It seems to me that all this kind of boogeyman threat about China harvesting our data seems kind of silly. I don't know. I'm not a technologist, but it just doesn't. I don't see how that is any bigger of a threat than anyone else who's harvesting our data. I mean, if China wanted data, they just buy it from Facebook.
Exactly.
There's literally no difference.
It's probably cheaper for them to go through data brokers than to like operate servers.
It's all there already. So I don't know. It seems a little bit, or a lot of it, bad faith.
Are you familiar with the Resist bill? That's the Resist Act that's coming out in the aftermath of this debacle in Congress?
No, tell me about it.
So there is now Restrict. I messed it up. The Restrict Act that is being promoted. There's a lot of speculation on what it could potentially do. There's vagueness surrounding it, but it's proposed legislation that was first introduced in the United States Senate on March 7th to authorize, get this, the Secretary of Commerce to review and prohibit certain transactions between persons in the United States and foreign adversaries. And the foreign adversaries list is, of course, the same villains, quote unquote, ranging from Iran to Venezuela to China and Russia, of course. And people are fearful that you can be fined up to $1 million and also with 20 years prison sentence for if they consider you to be doing something illegal.
It's like another way for them to absolutely destroy more of our security. Like everyone is like, oh, but they're stealing all of our data. They're stealing all of our data. We need to do something about this. Oh, okay. So you think banning TikTok and allowing the government to spy on you more than they already do, and if they catch you using a VPN, it's $1 million fine? Is this like a joke? That's way worse than just having TikTok exist.
Like utilizing, again, this is vague. They claim that it's not going to hit VPNs, but using VPNs, for example, or even using TikTok. This came after. This was directed towards TikTok.
If they ban TikTok, you can go to jail for using TikTok? That's
technically.
The bill? Okay. You better start building prisons, boy.
Well, yeah, that is a big.
Well, but the interesting. I'm glad you brought it up. The interesting thing about this is, from an economics point of view, it's kind of remarkable. I've lived all my life in the United States. I was born in Ohio and been working here all my life. And I grew up at a time when we were told in the economics courses I took in the universities where I've taught economics all my life, that an economy works best if it's private. And if the government doesn't enter in, do this, do that, regulate this, choose one company over another. We were told literally that this is a bad thing to be avoided at all costs. So I think one important thing is to recognize that all of that stuff has been thrown out the window in the last 5 or 10 years, just as if it were never spoken, as if it were never taught, even though it was the dominant ideological statement of what Western capitalism was all about. And you're now seeing, it used to be a phrase: the government should not choose winners and losers in the market.
And then guess what? When they decide that the winners and losers in the market are not the people they want them to be, well, what if we just not care about that anymore? Actually, we don't like capitalism when it's not benefiting us. Actually, when capitalism is benefiting other people, the capitalism isn't working the way that we want it to. People were asking for more information about the VPN stuff. The language describing who the Restrict Act applies to is confusing at best. The Commerce Secretary would be authorized to take steps to address risks posed by any covered transaction by any person. So what counts as a covered transaction? The bill states this means a transaction in which an entity described in subparagraph B has any interest. TLDR, it's the bill is specifically written to look like absolute shit, so that it's as vague as they want it to be. This could read to imply that any person using a VPN to access an app controlled by a foreign adversary or its alleged minions is subject to the secretary's ire. Hence, anyone using a VPN to access TikTok would be in trouble, specifically subject to up to $1 million in fines, 20 years in prison, or both. When Richard Wolff is talking about the fact that there are multiple reasons why the government wants to do this, it's for, not only is it because America wants to protect its hegemonic rule in every single way possible, including financially and like in the tech sector, but also the government will use any excuse to be able to violate your privacy. This is an insane violation of privacy. This is an absolutely insane violation of privacy. That's what he means when he says that it's not just one reason. It is one reason in that it's just the government basically fucking us over, but there's a lot of reasons. It's because they want to protect Silicon Valley. It's because they want more access to your data. It's because they want to protect American hegemonic rule. It's a bunch of shit. Also, foreign adversary means like anyone in the United States currently considered an adversary. So it could be Canada in a few years or EU, etc. Yeah. Basically, it's just like, it's America saying America number one. Which is embarrassing, right? Because America and Americans love to praise themselves about being the freest country and being able to do whatever they want, whenever they want. And then as soon as they have the opportunity to ban TikTok, as soon as they have the opportunity, yeah, okay, well, fuck this. Absolutely fuck this. Which is really sad.
The kind of phrase that we were told. Well, what you're seeing at every turn is exactly the opposite. The government is choosing winners and losers, helping these industries, not those industries, saving this one, not the other one, forbidding this, allowing that. It's never stopping, and it's not a sign of confidence in your system. It's a sign of fear and retreat and danger and isolation. And now let me put on my economics hat. You know, it's not that list that you mentioned a minute ago, Iran, Russia, China. You better get out your pencil, because that list is becoming longer and longer and longer with each passing day. It used to be Russia, China, and we would, have the usual socialist bad guys or communist bad guys. But now we have all kinds of societies. The important thing to remember is something called the BRICS, BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. We are isolating ourselves from them.
God, dude, I fucking love Richard Wolff. Whenever I want to go to bed, I could just put a Richard Wolff video up, and it's like I'm back in like college. It's also used as a way to conduct foreign policy because it says that you won't be allowed to access the Venezuelan website under President Maduro. So it's telling countries don't vote for someone we don't like or we're cutting you from our internet market. Another very good point. Yeah.
by pretending we are isolating them. But that's not the way it's working. The rest of the world is gathering around them, not us. And the make believe that that's not the case is a dangerous form of self delusion in the United States. Look, the war in Ukraine, whatever else you think of it, was supposed to be over in a short time once the sanctions got going. They were called the mother of all sanctions. They would bring Russia to its knees. Go back and look at the press in February, March, and April of last year. That's what they were predicting. None of that has happened. None of it. And why? Because it turned out that Russia, which is a weak economic system and was before this war started, but Russia has really big and powerful friends, more of them each day. And they turned to those friends and they made a bad joke out of the mother of all sanctions, which hasn't stopped the war one iota. And adding more tanks and sending more shells isn't going to change that. These are more and more looking like the acts of people who took a really bad turn, cannot admit it, cannot face it, and keep doubling down in a way that makes the rest of the world shake their head. And more of us inside the United States scratching our head and wondering, what are you doing? What are you doing? And that's really where people like me, that's where we find ourselves.
What kind of policy is it that you would like to see in terms of like how America responded to the war in Ukraine instead of sanctions?
Sure.
Oh,
I think
no.
the best way
Oh no, I heard many people saying shit about this Ukraine take. Uh-oh. Is it bad, guys, or is it good?
is actually to remind everybody about American history, right? At a certain point, back in the 18th century, the people here in the United States decided that they were sick and tired of being a colony of Great Britain.
Mm-hmm.
So we broke away from the British Empire.
Okay, so far so
We
good.
did that by means of a violent revolution. We fought a war with England, 1776. We've all learned about it in school umpteen times. We know. And an amazing thing happened. The British Empire, which at that time ruled the world.
Okay.
The slogan in England at that time was, "The sun never sets on the British Empire," because we've got the whole world covered, from India to Africa to, you know the story, okay? To the amazement of everybody, the British were defeated by the Americans in that Revolutionary War. But they didn't give up. In 1812, we had another war where the British Empire decided again to try to squash the new emerging economic power of the United States. 2 wars, they were defeated both times. Finally, the British got the memo. This not going to work. You are not going to undo the history that you yourself helped to make. So what you ought to do is sit down and work out with the United States this new get over your upset that your empire isn't growing anymore. Get over it. Recognize that your empire is now on the downturn and that a new power is arising, namely the United States. And they worked out a peace agreement that lasted a century. Okay, you want my answer? That's what we ought to be doing with Russia and China. Not go to one little war or not so little, one proxy war. Next, we'll have a war that isn't a proxy war. You know, we're on the edge of it anyway.
What's wrong with this take? This is fine. Uh-huh.
Way almost every day. We'll do something in the South China Sea. We'll provoke one way or another,
Great
or we
take.
will
The
be
H3
provoked.
subreddit are just massive livers.
I feel like people just don't like to hear communists talk about things or like Marxists talk about things.
This is a dead end. It's not in our interest. It's not in their interest. We need to live with this new emerging economic power. We don't need to keep trying to squash it. It doesn't work. Every other empire.
I'm always baffled by people's I'm always baffled by people's hubris, I guess. This is a literal professor of economics. And you think you know better than he does because you go on Reddit? You know, all he's saying is that war is bad and there's no reason for us to try and like go to war with Russia or China. Yeah? Am I misunderstanding something? I just don't understand. Like, he's just saying, I'm anti-war. What? What? And I mean, it's true. Going to war with China is one of the dumbest things that the US would ever do. Genuinely, one of the dumbest things America could ever do is go to war with China. We're never going to do it either. And then there are people who are like, well, he's an economics professor. He doesn't know anything about international stuff. Motherfucker, do you know about global markets? Do you know that the number one thing that determines how a country runs its country is what is going to impact its fucking GDP? It is the number one motivator for countries. GDP is so important. And you will see countries like China, when they look at their country, they're like, how do we make the GDP number go up? Countries, it's literally a gigantic part of basic economics. Yeah, it's like you don't need to know perfect foreign policy to know that one of the biggest things, if not the biggest thing, that impacts the decisions a country makes is their GDP. China will never go to war with the US. Maybe I don't know, if something crazy happens within the next decade and they manufacture AI that's just way better than ours, way faster, and are able to utilize it in such a way that they cause American societal collapse. Yeah, sure, maybe. As it stands right now and as it stood for the past decade, the US would never go to war with China and China would never go to war with the US because it would be an economic nightmare. Because our economies are tied like this. They are invested into our bonds. We are invested into theirs. And we rely on their goods and they rely on our purchases. We are this intertwined with their economy. We're not going to randomly decide, yeah, let's fuck up our economy by nuking China or vice versa. China wants us to keep buying their shit. And the US wants us to keep buying from China. You can trust an economist on this, you know? I don't understand. Global dependencies are one of the most important things in a country's economy. Yeah. It's so extreme that we use sanctioning as a way to force countries to do what we want. And it's actually useful. Russia is so fucked because of how sanctioned they are. They are running out of money. They are running out of money. It's very bad. It's very, very, very bad. Global dependency is more effective than nuclear threatening. Exactly. 1,000,000%. 1,000,000%.
Greek, Roman, British, Persian, Ottoman, you go through them. They all had a ride up then they plateaued, and then they went down. The last 100 years has been the American empire, especially after World War II.
Turkeys!
It was a great ride up for the U.S. It's going to be a bumpy, difficult ride down. And the sooner we face it, the better our judgments will be and the better our policies will be, because where we are going, whether it's Ukraine or banning TikTok or hounding Huawei, these are things that are going to hurt the U.S. I keep trying to explain to people, when Saudi Arabia shifts its oil resources from the West to China and Russia, this is a screaming signal. Even the people you thought were most dependent on you aren't anymore. And unless you're blind or blinded by some ideological reflex you ought to outgrow, you're going to be making one mistake after another, and people like you and me are going to be talking about them, even though we would wish we didn't have to.
And I
So
feel
your
like
answer is collaborative multipolarity, like leaning into that
That's right.
with all of the other hegemonic powers, or at least like superpowers that are growing at a rapid pace.
the propaganda, though, that I think a lot of people consume in America is that these countries are not willing to work with us. It's them that's putting up the roadblocks.
But they are working with us. We're working with them all day, every day. I mean, we have no commerce without China.
Listen, let me give you a couple of just simple statistics. Throughout the entire anti-Chinese or China bashing or whatever you want to call it of the last 8 or 9 years, beginning at the end of Obama, right through the tariff and trade wars of Trump, and now the continuation under the neocons working with Biden. Throughout that time, the trade between the United States and China goes up every single year. There's a peculiar disconnect between, if you pardon me, the roaring bullshit from the politicians and the underlying reality that we need them. We need them to produce consumer goods. If the American people had not been able to buy cheap Chinese consumer goods over the last 30 years, they would have demanded and they would have gotten higher wages to pay what would have been the price if those things had been produced anywhere else. Capitalists in America are grateful, if they're honest, for the cheap Chinese goods that have made it possible for profits to go up without rising wages, because you could go to your neighborhood TJ Maxx store and buy inexpensive Chinese clothing, or to the other stores. You know, there is no Amazon, there is no Walmart without Chinese goods. If you plot the growth of Walmart and the growth of China, you discover something. It's the same business. The China can outproduce us on everything, but they could never have gotten into the American market unless Walmart, Target, and all the others acted eagerly to be the distributor of those Chinese goods and to make a fortune for themselves along the way. Those are the realities. The rest is make-believe. Nobody wants this war in Ukraine. Above all, the people of Ukraine, who are suffering beyond all words the destruction of their society. Who's benefiting out of this? I mean,
American weapons manufacturers?
As usual, it's actually America's favorite thing to do. We love to send weapons and sell weapons to other countries so that we can profit off of other people dying.
Excuse me?
American weapons manufacturers are.
Yep.
It seems like those with the least to lose and the most to gain out of this are the ones that are pushing for it and pushing for the continuation of it. whether it be Boris Johnson back when he was the prime minister going into Ukraine during the first round of peace negotiations or a possible ceasefire and peace negotiation talks that were happening, organized by Turkey, or whether it be, Ned Price and numerous other American State Department officials continuously talking about how they are not interested in peace at all. Obviously, there's an argument here about what Ukrainians want, and some will say that, the overwhelming majority of Ukrainians want to keep fighting this fight, but ultimately, we are not giving Ukrainians everything they want. It's not like we're, implementing Article 5. We're not even giving Ukrainians F-16s. We're not training them on that. We might down the line, I think, but so far, these are demands that they've made that we haven't conceded to. So, I think that pushing for peace negotiations on that front, with China and Russia at the other side of the table, with Ukraine and the United States of America on one side of the table, would be the quickest and most swift way to try to stop this conflict and further bloodshed from continuing.
Well, I mean, let me just expand one dimension of that point. We now have a...
So people keep bringing up this, and I have looked through as much information as I can, and I have yet to find any information about him saying this. So if anyone wants to, I don't know, link me a timestamp where he says it exactly, or link me an article or something else where he actually says it exactly, I would appreciate that. People are saying, let me find it. Well, I think I closed the chat message, that his take is bad because he says that we shouldn't give support to Ukraine. Can someone please send me a source where he says that we shouldn't give support to Ukraine? Because I have yet to find anything that says that he said that.
A moral hazard as it pertains to the working poor when you're helping the working poor. It's never a moral hazard when you're helping bankers get golden parachutes in the aftermath of the 2008 financial collapse. So what you're basically, just to make it a little bit easier to understand for our audience here, am I correct in stating that we have two methods of dealing with the inflation? We have monetary policy and fiscal policy. Fiscal policy conducted by the legislative branch, which is usually just completely powerless, with the exception of the bipartisanship that they always find when it comes down to more money for the military. And then the monetary policy is also one that you can use, and it's pretty much the only one that you can use, unfortunately, because there is no such deflationary fiscal policy that the Republicans or the Democrats will ever allow. So they're utilizing that, the control over the inflation, by controlling the interest rates, with the express purpose of depressing wages, kicking people out of jobs, with the hopes that inevitably people will be, this tight labor market will turn back around, and you will have a labor force that's willing and able to take less pay for the same work.
Yeah, and again, I don't mean to beat a dead horse here, but again, I'm astonished. I'm an economics professor. I'm astonished that the only way we are discussing as a nation dealing with the inflation is by raising interest rates, which will throw millions of people out of work. And everybody knows that, which will probably hurt the poorest amongst us most, the last hired, the first fired, all of that again, worsening the disparities of our racial community, of our ethnic community, of the genders, and on and on. Really, we're going to go through that? I'm a professor. I learned that there are other methods of dealing with inflation.
Can we talk about that? Can we talk about that?
Do not involve raising interest rates. I'm mystified why I live in a country where the people in charge know what I just said. And
the people in the Fed, they know. So it's weird because for anyone who doesn't know anything about the Federal Reserve, Federal Reserve basically controls interest rates, and there is some things that happen in the Federal Reserve that kind of nobody knows what'll happen. Like there have been instances where they've raised the interest rates and they're like, whoa, okay, what's going on here? We didn't intend for this to happen. But there are things that they know do not fix the problem. And they just don't care because what they want to do is make as much money as possible. They don't actually care about helping the working class. So they will actively put policies in to help themselves and not to actually help anyone else.
They refuse.
Hassan needs to raise his hand before interrupting the professor. True. Fucking true.
To discuss it. We have a country in which raising interest rates is considered like the thing, the only thing, and all that's left for us to discuss is how many percentage points it'll go up or down, how soon. Let me drive it home in a personal way. But people seem to like this, so I'll tell you this story. I got my PhD in economics at Yale University. At the time I got it, it was almost all men who were students. Women didn't go into economics then. They do much more now, but they didn't then. So
women go into business courses a lot now, but he is correct. It was a primarily very male-dominated space. Nowadays, in all of my business classes, it was like 50% women.
There were 2 or 3 women in my class, and we all got to know them because there were only 2 or 3 women in my class. And one of them, who took the same courses I did, in the same classroom I did, from the same professor I did, was a woman you've gotten to know. Her name is Janet Yellen. So I know what she knows. She knows what I know. We were schoolmates. We went to the same graduate program. In that program, we learned that one of the most interesting ways to stop an inflation that has been used in many countries at many times, often with great success, and that was used August 15th, 1971, by the sitting president, Richard M. Nixon. He got on television and he said to the American people, we've got a terrible inflation. Here's how we're going to deal with it. As of right now, as he was speaking on radio and TV, any business that raises its price, we're going to come for you, we're going to arrest you, and you're going to jail. Any union or other worker organization that pushes or tries to push the wage up, we will do the same to you. This policy is called in this country a wage price freeze. In other countries, it's called an incomes policy because it freezes the income of the employer and the income of the employee at the same time, wherever it happens to stand. That was originally put into effect for 90 days. It was extended.
Yeah, Nixon is like a weird, president because he was obviously very corrupt. But weirdly, he actually had some decent domestic policy. Despite how, well, of course he was racist. Everyone was racist. Not to say that it was okay or anything, but I would have been surprised if he wasn't racist. Okay. That guy was literally every single president that we've had has been racist. Okay. Not to say that it's okay, obviously, but it's kind of like saying Joe Biden's a war criminal. It's yeah, all of the presidents are war criminals. Every single one is definitely, if there's a hell, they're all burning in it, 1,000,000% for the crimes that they have committed against humanity. Obama especially. All right? Spoilers, Denims. Yeah, America's racist. There's no getting around that. Yeah. But literally, despite the mess that Nixon was, I'm pretty sure Nixon actually had a few, a good handful of decent policies. The whole EPA thing, guys? That was Nixon. That was under Nixon. Richard Nixon created the EPA to fix national guidelines and monitor and enforce them. which I don't know if you guys know, the EPA is really important. Okay? Really, really important. Yeah, this was during the Ralph Nader days. Yep. And then he also was in charge here of OSHA. And to be clear, I'm not saying that like, wow, Nixon was such a great guy. Like he was just like such a good guy, you know, like he was just like the best. People died to get this. Okay? Many people died to get this. This was off of the backs and lives and blood of workers. But I will give credit where credit is due. That he signed OSHA in, that he signed EPA in, I will give him that. Okay? That's more. All I'm saying is between him and Reagan, I think we all know who we'd rather see burn in hell. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying that he was a great guy. I'm not saying that, like, you know, we should honor his legacy, that we should remember him, that we should frame him or anything like that, okay? I'm not saying any of that. I'm not fucking simping for President Nixon. I'm only saying that weirdly, despite what like an insane person he was and like an insanely corrupt person he was, signing these things into office, thanks, man. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. Presidential smash or pass. You trying to get me canceled, Saber? You're trying to get me fucking canceled? Let's be real, okay? There's one person that needs to go on the smash one, okay? And I mean, that has to be Bill Clinton, right? It has to be. We all agree. Oh, and FDR. Sorry. We have to agree. I'm just kidding. Chill. Oh my God. Oh my goodness. You okay? You okay? Oh gosh. Pandora's box. Yeah. Oh God. Teddy would make me feel safe. Okay, true. No love for my man Taft. Hello, Kennedy. Oh yeah, how could I forget about Kennedy? You're completely correct. You're actually right. You're right. Kennedy, I'm a fool. I'm a fool to not list Kennedy first.
Brought the inflation down. It is an alternative. It has its strengths and weaknesses, just like raising interest rates, but they're different. And an honest society trying to deal honestly with its problems would have a debate publicly about these alternatives. And by the way, there are others I could give you if you were interested. It's not the only two. There's more than two. But we live in a society that has a quick dismissal. If they even admit what I just explained to you, which is in every history book and can be verified in 10 minutes of Googling anything, there's no excuse for what's going on.
Okay, someone in chat said that the links are working. The Discord is working. Can you guys try it out? Can you guys try it? I reset the discord.gg/denims. It should work now. I think Discord is back up and running and working again. So if you wanted to join earlier and you didn't get a chance because Discord was completely breaking and crunching, it should be good now.
Just like breezily dismissing the Ukraine war by saying the Russians and the Chinese don't offer to sit down and have a ceasefire. Both of those countries have done it. Maybe they're lying. Maybe they'd cop out once you started the process. But we're not in a very good position to call them bluffers if we haven't called the bluff. And if we're willing to sit down without conditions, why don't we say so? And I don't think you can use the argument about what the Ukrainians want because here I'm not interested in criticizing Mr. Zelensky, but you should know, if you don't, that he has shut down opposition newspapers, opposition media, opposition politicians. He's fighting a war. Maybe you have to do that in war, but there is no way to know what the mass of the Ukrainian people feel unless you want to take the fact that somewhere between 6 and 7 million of them have left the country, and it's not that big a country, and that would not be a sign that you would want to make a big argument about, that this shows that they're in favor of fighting to the last Ukrainian, since they've made a choice not to be among those last Ukrainians that we're fighting for. So it does strike me as there's an awful lot of accumulated evidence that we're not dealing honestly and straightly with these major problems of our society. And that's usually the sign of a society that is scared shitless, if you pardon my Spanish, and therefore is functioning with a level of anxiety that is scary to watch.
Getting back to fiscal policy and monetary policy, you talked about some things that have demonstrably worked, like the Nixon price freeze.
Right.
For contemporary America, for contemporary American society, do you have any suggestions on fiscal policy that would be deflationary? And can we even implement these policies?
Absolutely. The first policy that would be deflationary, and it is long overdue, is raising taxes on corporations and the rich. If you want it very concrete, reverse the tax cuts that were passed in December of 2017.
Yeah, this is where I'm at. This chat message is where I'm at. This guy talks so reasonably, and it's so wild that people want to misinterpret that. Yeah. 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 Like, his position was literally, hey, you can have whatever opinion you want about Russia and Ukraine. You have to register the reality that Zelensky is fighting a war, and he is fighting for his position, right? And he is silencing some of this shit because the government is still corrupt even in Ukraine. So it's hard for us to even know what the average Ukrainian wants. That's all he said. And then people are like, wow, he fucking wants Ukrainians to get annexed by Russia. It's like, that's not what he said. All he said is like the information is hard to get. That's all he said. That's literally all he said. Like, whoa. Oh my God. And he's right. I mean, he's just stating something that is factually true. He's not adding an opinion piece. He's just saying, hey, this is the reality of Ukraine right now. It's hard to tell exactly what are the demands and wishes and wants of the Ukrainian people because of what is happening in the country. That was it. That's all he said. That was it. You know? Which is true. The information is hard to get. He literally said he doesn't know what the Ukrainian people want, and neither do you. So stop pretending like you do. When we have the opportunity and ability to do this, then yeah, we can do this. Oh my God, dude. Oh my God. It's like the like listening comprehension today. Some people are just going through it. Most Ukrainians don't want to be invaded. That would be nice if that's what we were talking about. What he was talking about was, what do Ukrainians want right now that they've already been invaded? Also, the link you posted is a U.S. government website. You don't think the U.S. might be putting a little bit of propaganda, potentially, because it, like, he's not saying like, yeah, actually what Ukrainians want is they want Russia to take over. And he's also not saying what Ukrainians want is to continue the war. He's not saying anything. He's saying we don't know what they want because getting information from the population there right now is difficult on account of the whole war thing. That was it. That's all he said. That's all he said. This is a true like pancake waffle moment, guys. I did not know this was going to be so polarizing for so many people. This is a full-blown pancake waffle moment. He's like, I like pancakes. And everyone's just like, you fucking hate waffles. It's like, whoa, dude, whoa. Damn. Whoa, man.
The biggest single economic act of recent history was that tax cut. That is what produced the trillion-dollar deficits we've had ever since. We had deficits before. It's not that we didn't, but we took a quantum leap. And let me drive home. The 2017 tax cuts, benefiting mostly corporations and the rich, came at the end of a 30-year period, maybe even 40 years, of a dramatic boom in profits, of a dramatic increase in the inequality of wealth. Those were two arguments that said this was the last thing you needed to do. Corporations were rolling in money. That's why we had the greatest peacetime stock market boom in the 80s, 90s, and into the first decade of this century. They didn't need it. They shouldn't have got it. The people who deserved it were the ones who had come out on the short end of the stick over the 80s, 90s, and the first decade of this century. If you wanted to help someone, help them. But if you didn't want to help them, okay. But shoveling vast amounts of money into the hands of those who needed them least was an incredibly, if you pardon me, stupid. It was so greedy, it lopped over beyond greed into downright stupid. And then the scratch.
Did he just say the S word?
Your head and say, gee, we have terrible deficits.
Also, can we stay away from saying like schizo or schizo posting in chat? It's kind of harmful to people who actually have to deal with schizophrenia, especially because schizophrenia is something that's so demonized in society, even though it's something that is very, is the word treatable. Like people who deal with schizophrenia aren't like every day going through like, you know, I don't know. I just personally, I would like to stay away from that stuff. Hassan says that a lot. I don't love it. Yeah, I understand why people say it. And I understand that when people say like, oh, this person is schizo posting, what they're trying to say is like, this person is being like weird or like they're just posting nonsense, etc. But I think it's a little harmful to people who are and have to deal with schizophrenia. Just say like unhinged and stuff like that. I think unhinged is a really good one. I'm not saying that anyone in chat who's been using it or has used it is like trying to be ableist or anything. I just would like to stay away from that type of language. And I understand other people use it. I just don't want to use it. So just say they tripping. Yeah. Yeah. So I would appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.
What the hell did you think you'd get with a tax cut? It's like today saying, you know, we have a shortage of labor. Hello, you just kicked out millions of immigrants. They were doing that work. What are you, surprised?
I really like unhinged. Unhinged is like, it's a really good way to like explain exactly how weird or insane someone is being or whatever. So yeah, this is pretty good. Wait, I want to go back and listen to this.
Millions of immigrants. They were doing that work. What are you, surprised by the results of what you did? Were you born yesterday?
I wanted to ask about go ahead.
Okay.
Oh
well,
God. Do I have enough strength in me about stock buybacks? Oh Jesus. Stock buybacks are one of those things that's like, from my understanding, actually it might be interesting to listen to a professor after like 3 years of not being in school It'll be really interesting to listen to a professor talk about stock buybacks again, especially a Marxist professor talk about stock buybacks. So I feel like I'm right back in school. From my understanding, this was what I was taught by capitalist economic professors. Stock buybacks are a tool the way that automation is a tool. Currently,
You can also say silly posting to DNM balls. DNM silly has silly.
Currently, from my understanding, like automation should be a tool that is used to make people work less hours. That now that McDonald's can have like kiosks where people can order and they can make more profit, people should be able to live better because because that corporation that's making so much money off of American business should have to pay more in taxes, and then those taxes should get refunneled into some sort of UBI. That more automation it should be, theoretically, it should be good, and it should help us lead to shorter work hours and more relaxation time. Unfortunately, in practice, automation just makes people's lives worse.
Immediate, not a full-blown solution, but one other immediate form of legislation could come by making stock buybacks illegal again, especially at a time when, corporations are very clearly only beholden to their shareholders. Even the World Economic Forum and other capitalists are talking about how they need to find a new capitalism a stakeholder focused solution to the economic problems. I think that's one other thing that we could absolutely be considering as well.
Yes, I agree with you, but I hate to throw water on your little campfire here. So I'm going to agree with you that stock buyback, they certainly are a market manipulation. That's why they're done. Their goal is to boost the price of the stock in the market. The company, by going in and being a major...
Wait, am I right? Oh my God, please.
The buyer has the effect of driving up the price of the stock. If you remember that members of the board of directors of many companies, high executives in many companies, are paid with stock options and other kinds of stock remuneration, then you can see they have a personal interest and a personal gain by using the company's money to drive up the price of the shares they have. But here's the water I'm going to throw a little bit. Corporations understand what we're saying. The general public maybe not, but the people who run the larger corporations hire economists and accountants like me who explain this to them. And, maybe not the first or third or ninth time, but by the 15th time we go over it, they kind of get it. And they can keep it in mind because it's their wallet. But they have developed over the years a whole host of strategies. And if you deny them this one, and I'm in favor of it, I agree with you, I would support it. But I've been around now, and I will tell you, they have dozens of other strategies that will accomplish more or less the same thing.
Oh, okay.
Absolutely.
I'll give you one example.
I was wrong. Okay. So he's completely in the boat of like, the only reason that it is not worth banning them at all is just that they have other tools in their arsenal to do what they want. Okay. Well, I've changed my position. All the pause champing for nothing, yeah. All of that pause champing, and for what? Damn, I really would love to know more. Well, I guess he's going to keep talking about it.
Example, just so you get the
I know
flavor.
Reagan legalized it.
Company A big multi-billion-dollar company, and Company B, another one. And they get together over golf or at the fanciest restaurant they can find, and they come to an agreement. Company A uses its profits to buy shares in Company B. That's not a stock buyback.
Obviously.
And Company B uses its profits, you get the picture, to buy the stock of Company A. I've watched it. it's there, it's a strategy. And I could go on. And as
Yeah.
long as we allow a tiny group of people, a board of directors, 15, 20 human beings sitting at the top of these mega corporations, as long as you give them the authority of disposing of the billions of dollars in profits, in revenues that they have at their disposal, you can't be surprised if they use it to enrich themselves. That's how the game of capitalism is organized. The rest of us are supposed to be spectators and go ooh and ah when they use the money.
So I might actually not be wrong, depending on whether or not he agrees with this statement. With stock buybacks in a giant cooperative type thing may be good. Because my understanding of stock buybacks is you want people to be personally invested in making sure that a company does well, and stock buybacks are the way to do that. And that's what I thought he was going to say, but instead he said a very other good point, which is they don't need to do that because they have all these other tools in their disposal. Is he in favor of stock buybacks in like a cooperative corporation?
To aggrandize, themselves or their companies. They really do have lovely shrubbery around their headquarters.
I want to say there's at a certain point, and kind of goes back to what we were talking about before, when, during a 40-year period of, huge profits, they give themselves another massive tax cut. It, like you said, it's stupid, but it's even worse than that. It's almost like self-defeating greed to the point where it's destabilizing society. It's going to end up eventually with their head on a pike. You know what I mean? Or their head in a goddamn.
Ethan is recognizing the contradictions, Professor Wolff.
Yeah, I think the VOD is up right now.
Head in a guillotine. So, like, how is it that they're not aware? They must be aware of where they're going. And at a certain point, I just don't understand why they don't acknowledge that I can be ultra rich. And also, it's as important that we live in a stable society where someone's not going to, people are going to come eat me.
It isn't.
Okay.
Let me double check.
Let me answer it by telling you a story. Since I am a graduate of the fancy schools in this country, and have all the connections that those schools create for you when you go through them. The education you get, by the way, is quite mediocre, but the connections, they are super.
Yeah,
They're just
okay.
super. All right. I have therefore been at the following conversation. A group of people sitting on the boards of directors of the biggest corporations in America. Some of them talk like you just did. They say things like, well, I'll quote you, Warren Buffett will say to the public, I pay a lower rate of taxes on my billions than my secretary does on what we pay her. Remember, he said that. He got a lot of play. So he gets it. He gets it that it's stupid what they're doing. It's self-destructive what they're doing. And he appeals to the other directors like him to see what he's saying. And he's not the only one. But the problem is there's another group of directors who come right back at him and say the following. The mass of people in this country are too divided, too disorganized, and too ignorant.
Ooh. We're getting into it.
To figure any of this out.
They say that? They're that?
They say that.
They're
they
actually that malignant. It's just evil.
Well, it's very... Look, if you keep sticking it, I'm going to defend them now. But I'm only answering your question. I don't mean to defend them.
No, you can have... Well, let me double check.
But I am going to defend them. Because here's where it goes. Once you get over your anger that they talk like, think like that, which I get, you're going to ask yourself, because you're a smart guy, why? I mean, people aren't born that way. Why would they think and talk like that? And here's the answer. They were Warren Buffetts in the past. They warned in their company, look, let's not go so far. Let's give the workers a decent.
So, from my understanding, you can still have share buybacks within a private cooperative, which would do essentially the same thing that I was talking about earlier about incentivizing individuals to care about their business. As long as the company isn't public. Once the company is public, you're fucked, because then you open yourself up to shareholders who have no personal investment in the company. So once you're public, you're fucked, and all public stocks are just fucked. But I think within the context of a private cooperative, share buybacks are fine. Obviously, yeah. To be clear, currently the way that they're used, it's just a way to pump the stock, and it doesn't actually serve any purpose. And if you wanted to fix the corruption, you would have to remove that and like a litany of other loopholes, essentially.
Pay. Let's, pay our taxes. Let's spend some money to make the city nicer for people or whatever. And
yeah, exactly. Yeah. You guys get it. Oh my God, yes. You guys understand what I'm talking about. Share buybacks in a co-op would only make sense for when employees are leaving the company and want to cash out. Exactly. And like, you shouldn't be tied to a corporation just because you started working for the co-op. Because in that instance, you aren't using the buyback as a way to artificially pump the stock. You're using the buyback as a way to cash people out. Okay, good. I was just making sure that like I'm not completely off base on that. I'm pretty sure that would be accurate. Ownership incentives, yeah. It's like a grand formula, constantly changing, aiming to keep us in their mates. Oh no, the current economic system is a complete shit show. It's a complete shit show. Buybacks can have a good use sometimes, yeah. Exactly.
They got shot down by the, let's call them, for lack of a better term, the conservative-y type, pro-business types.
I want to address something really, really quickly. Oh, okay. I'm not trying to like roast you, chatter, or anything. I wanted to talk about a point that you're bringing up. The thing about shares is pointless. Revenue is most important since wages are paid out of it. Shares just make the paper valuation better. From my understanding, the reason you want to have shares for a co-op is because it's an easy way to give people what they are worth to the company. And they are personally invested in having the company do well. And when they make the company more money, they make more money. Their shares are tied to their labor. And if they have generated the company $100,000 and they've decided they want to go somewhere else, they should be able to cash out all of that money that they generated for the company. Why not just have revenue sharing at that point? I think it's only because stocks are a little bit easier to give to people. Or sorry, not stocks, excuse me. Shares are easier to give to people than like a revenue sharing system. And that would be the only reason from my understanding. Shares give ownership to current and future profits. Exactly. And like profit sharing is that the one problem with profit sharing is that when a company gets really big, you start dealing with a little bit of issues. Whereas if you do, I think it'll still work with shares.
Long stream war.
Mm-hmm. Once you get to a certain scale, revenue sharing makes just a little bit less sense. Exactly. I think if you work at like, not impossible to be clear, I think this is just like another tool that corporations can use if they want to. I would have to look into it more, I guess, and see what more Marxist economists think and whether or not like we should honestly scrap the entirety of shares and there's something fundamentally corrupt, because I haven't seen anything about that. Or if it's fine.
They got shot down, and the pro-business guys stuck it to the workers some more and evaded the taxes some more and didn't give a nickel to the community. And guess what? The profits of the company went up because there was no reaction. The local politicians didn't do anything. The people didn't get the pitchforks. They didn't march down Main Street with them. None of it. And so over time, they began to feel as though their let's call it humane impulse or whatever you want to call it, to be nice guys as employers was a mistake. Made them look like they were weak or in some way not as gung-ho to make a profit for the company as their fellow directors. They didn't want to take that kind of risk.
Right.
They didn't want that kind of reputation. They kind of swallowed their bad feeling. They stopped telling their wife about how they felt because the wife would notice that if you felt that way in the past, you're not feeling that way now. I don't hear you say anything about doing good for the community. You've got me sitting on the board of the local Y or the orchestra or the local charity, but you're not coming to the meetings and you're not even asking me anymore. So what you've got is a capitalist employer class whose majority thinks they can safely ignore the mass repercussions. Nothing will happen. The Republicans and the Democrats will distract people away from what we're doing to them economically. They'll get more interested in, I don't know, immigrants or in carrying a gun or whether transgender people can use the toilet.
God bless Richard Wolff. God bless you. Yep.
We don't have to worry about it.
That
and
makes
that's
sense.
the answer they give.
Sadly, that does make sense.
So what is the most effective mechanism of pushback in your opinion?
It's exactly what we were just talking about. Let me give you an example. As I'm speaking to you, in three countries of Europe is the answer. France, Germany, and Greece. In all of those countries,
I fucking love Richard Wolff so much. It really does feel like I'm back in college. In a good way.
Masses of people are letting the power structure there, both the political power structure and the business leadership, know that there are limits. In France, they are telling the president, Mr. Macron, you are not going to solve the fiscal troubles of France by depriving the people of 2 years of their pension. You're not going to do that. We're not going to let you. In Germany, all
He's wrong on this one, sadly. The best pushback is change.org petition.
all the railroad stations and all the airports are closed because the workers are on strike. And the issue there is the inflation. You are not going to jack up the price of oil and gas for all of us and then not change our wages. I mean, we're not going to tolerate it. And Greece, you might find, is even the most interesting. 4 weeks ago, they had a terrible train wreck, worse than the one we had in East Palestine, Ohio, but around the same time. It killed 60 young people, among other things. And they went into the streets to denounce the privatization of the rail system in their country. The government came down on them, and so now they're all against the government. This is making everybody stop and pay real close attention. The polls in France, my father was French. I speak French. I have since I've been a kid. The polls in France are about 60 to 65% supporting the people in the streets. So there is no escape from the president for him. He's in a deep, deep container of doo-doo and with very little mechanism.
I am way too immature to watch him say that. Doo-doo. Oh, hi.
Mechanism to get out of it.
Well, what you're describing also, I can't. I have to mention this, but what you're describing is three nations that even with Greece that have a higher rate of participation in unions in the labor force,
Yep.
with a stronger.
Oh, I wanted to address something really quickly in chat. Yeah, Mayor Cat is being very cute. Denims, if you get paid in share according to your value, we would get the same system where nurses are paid 100 times less than marketing. Just a quick misconception about this. Technically, marketing is considered like a expense that can't be linked to revenue. The way that corporations account for marketing expenses is basically, we need to do marketing. We don't know how much money we're making off of this marketing, so we're just going to count it as like a blanket expense. So actually people who work in marketing wouldn't necessarily be paid more than nurses. I get what you're saying, and I get the point that you're making, which is that like we do need to make sure that we stay away from a system where we are accidentally giving money to people who are bringing more to the company, aka like CEOs. In marketing, it's just a little bit different because of how we account for marketing expenses. We specifically do not tie revenue to marketing costs because there's no way to measure how many more people bought an item because they saw an ad. So yeah, just like quick little statement there.
History of labor uprisings, and also like even when you consider France, for example, even if they do not have actual card-carrying union members, they have collective bargaining agreements that encompass damn near the entirety of the economy. In France, it's I believe 98% collective bargaining agreements.
Yes, and they're industry wide. I mean,
Yeah.
the unions get together, the employers get together, they bargain across the table, and it covers the entire industry across the country. That's
Whereas
right.
One fact that I like to always point to in the United States of America is the union participation rate in this country is actually even lower than a country that we destroyed, we eviscerated, like Chile. Chile has a 15% union participation rate. The United States, on the other hand, has an 11% union participation rate.
A little higher?
Which is unimaginable to think about. It's unimaginable to consider, considering what we've done in Chile. I think that factors into this a lot. You talk about democracy at work. You talk about how workplaces should implement a democratic process, even though it's authoritarian currently, and people expect that, and people think that that's normal. I think that that is the main mechanism of pushback. Also, building out.
I want to ask.
Of course,
maybe
Ipo.
this is why. I'm just wondering why.
I am going to work on giving people permission to post links if they're subs sometime soon. Just in case people don't know, if you post a link in chat, I still see it. It just gets timed out.
Why are Americans so docile?
Yes. In many ways, that's what we've been talking about, even if it hasn't been explicitly in so many words. And the whole world wonders about it. I wonder about it, but I can assure you, I go to Europe fairly often. I give talks, papers at university conferences and crap like that. And that's the question I'm asked. What is it? The French have the yellow vests a few years ago. You guys may remember before the pandemic hit, this amazing outpouring of opposition among the French people to the rising cost of gas and electric bills. And so yeah, I mean, what is it about the American people? They grumble. You know what they say at the bar at night. You've been there. You know what they say over the dinner table. You know they have feelings about this. They're angry about what the price of eggs going up the 2 to 3 times over the last 6-8 months. Everybody knows you can't. I mean, and inflation is a phenomena that pokes you in the nose, every day. So people know, but they have this sense somehow in America that it is either impossible or unwise to get together with other people, enjoy the benefit of having numbers, and beginning to actually act democratically, to say that we, the people, have a right to be heard, to have a right to shape the policies that we live under. They say it, but they don't raise the...
Professor.
Darn it. Mayor Cat, why'd you do that?